do you think he's doing? He like dropped his stuff and he's like, oh dude, yo, you dropped your stuff. Oh, okay, you're just gonna stand there and not help me pick it up? Whoa, whoa.
So you it came out in a conversation that we were having, and the question was like, does God want us to suffer, and how do we know whether or not to change or to like leave the suffering that we have so that we will be happier, and when is it, you know, not actually suffering but growth? The first kind of suffering is passion. I saw one of my friends share it on her IG story about the meaning behind passion. Passion actually kind of means a cause that you're willing to suffer for, so that's being passionate. So that's why when they talk about things you're passionate about, they always say how you don't mind doing the shitty stuff or the difficult stuff because you're so passionate about something. So if you're really passionate, let's say about soccer, or passionate about drawing, you would do all the training and the grueling stuff and the boring parts of it because you really enjoy it, or you're passionate about the subject or the topic. Yeah, and that's why it's also called the Passion of Christ, because like, you know, why would Jesus want to come down and suffer so much? It's because he's super passionate about bridging the relationship between us and God back, and that is his motivation, that is his passion, and he's willing to suffer for it. So that's one kind of suffering where it is suffering for a cause or suffering for a passion. And obviously those kind of suffering, it's easier to stay in it because if you know your motivation, if you know, you know, your goal, nothing worth having comes without suffering. And I think that a lot of times when we try to run away from suffering is when life really gets really hard. But then like when we kind of accept that there is suffering and it's part of the process of life, then it gets easier to accept, you know, the difficult parts and the parts that you need to persevere through. The other kind of suffering is the suffering of consequences. So you did something not so good and you are experiencing the consequence of your actions. For example, I know that my body doesn't react very well to cheese, but then I go and eat the cheese because it felt good at that moment, and then afterwards I'm suffering the consequence of it. That suffering is not caused by anyone but by my decision, and based on principles of the universe or based on principles of the world, there is a consequence. So for every action, there is a reaction, and the reaction can be good or the reaction can be bad. So you choose what you want. The reaction becomes suffering or something negative if you made the wrong choice. So a lot of times, if you want to know whether you made the right choice or not, you can also judge the choice by the consequence or the reaction. Okay, so the third kind of suffering is suffering for growth. So you're in a situation that's not ideal, but then you are left in it, and in that process, you actually grow. It may not be like a very fair suffering, it may not be something that anyone wants, it may not even be because of what you did, or it's not a suffering that you choose to have, but a suffering happens, and in that suffering you grow and you learn. And I think that a lot of times in suffering or when bad things happen, there is a lot of opportunity for growth, something along the lines where your suffering kind of reveals to you the pointers in your life that requires growth. When in good times it doesn't come out, it doesn't show that it needs to be addressed, but in when you are suffering, that's when all the cracks or the dirt or the things that are in your heart or in your life or in your character that you need to address comes to light. And I think as much as I don't like to suffer, who likes to suffer, right? But without those suffering, I think I can't become a better person. I would not have even thought about becoming a better person, or I would not have even thought about addressing certain issues I didn't even know that I have. Yeah, I mean, usually I try to avoid talking about this kind of topics because it's just so profound and so like complex, and there are just so many layers to talk about. And I'm gonna shower. Bye. I'm gonna treat myself and do a mask in the shower. I bought this from Innisfree. They're like $2 a pack. I don't know, is that expensive? Sounds, I don't know, no idea. But anyway, this one is cucumber, and this one is rice. I don't know what that means, but something moisturizing or something like that. My skin is very, very sensitive, so the mask doesn't stay very long on my face. Once I start to feel it getting a bit tingly, I can't take it off.